Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye Nashtakraya Chadeshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is very means and complex, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, by rendering services to the devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, his praise of transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact.
Class. Present, there were so many wonderful Vaishnavas, so please give me your blessings. Hopefully I can give you something that's useful in this class. So, 101, we were reading the sheet. Yesterday we were discussing how we have the personality of Kali present as a king. And so, just for some context, so Maharaj Parikshit saw this king killing the cow, the principles of religion. And as soon as Maharaj Parikshit showed up, this dude, fool of a king, took off his clothes and showed his real personality. So I think we'll start reading those verses. That was just for some context. Yeah. So then I guess a little bit before this, some more context, was that we talked about mercy yesterday in class. And that's because when he showed his true face, that he wasn't a king, that he actually was a personality of Kali, he surrendered to Maharaj Parikshit. He told him that he did apologize, but he did surrender and say, please show me mercy. And so Maharaj Parikshit is confronted with what to do, because he is the king, he's a Kshatriya, so his responsibility, his duty is to protect citizens. So he's faced with this dilemma. What is he going to do? Because as a king, he has two problems. Because one, his duty, his responsibility is to protect the people and protect the weak. And in this case, even in the face of an enemy who has surrendered onto him, it's also his duty to protect those who have surrendered. So we're going to speak a little bit about that. So I have 4 verses. I don't know which verse we're going to focus on. Okay. So yeah, we started.
Therefore, O friend of your religion, you do not deserve to remain in a place where experts perform sacrifices according to truth and religious principles for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of God.
In all sacrificial ceremonies, although sometimes a demigod is worshipped, the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, is worshipped because he is the super soul of everyone and exists both inside and outside like the air. Thus it is he only who awards all welfare to the worshipper.
Sri Suta Goswami said, the personality of God, thus being ordered by Maharaj Parikshit, began to tremble with fear. Seeing the king before him like Yamaraj, kill him. Kali spoke to the king as follows.
O your majesty, though I may live anywhere and everywhere under your order, I shall but see you with bow and arrows wherever I
Therefore, O chief, unwanted protectors of religion, please fix some place for me where I can live permanently under the protection of the government.
Sutta Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, thus being petitioned by the personality of Kali, gave him permission to reside in places where gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter.
Okay, so we can start with a verse then. So we can do the last week. Sutta uvacha
Sutta uvacha
avyartitastada tasmai
Avyartitastada tasmai
stanani kalayatado
Stanani kalayetado
yutam panam striyasuna
Yutam padam sriyasuna
yatra dhammaschaturvidaha.
Yatra dharma chaturvidaha
Please chant.
Sutta uvacha
Sutta uvacha
Avyartitastada tasmai
Avyartitastada tasmai
Stanani kalayedaro
Stanani kalayetado
Yutam panam sriyasuna
Yutam padam sriyasuna
Yatra dhammaschaturvidaha
Yatra dharma chaturvidaha Sutta uvacha
Avyartitastada tasmai
Avyartitastada tasmai
Stanani kalayetado
Stanani kalayetado
Yutam padam sriyasuna
Yutam padam sriyasuna
Yatra dhamma chaturvidaha
Yatra dharma chaturvidaha
Sutta uvacha
Sutta uvacha
Avyartitastada tasmai
Avyartitastada tasmai
Kalayedado
Stanani kalayetado
Yutam panam striyasuna
Yutam padam sriyasuna
Yadharmaschaturvidha
Yatra dharma chaturvidaha
We can do transitions. Or I'm sorry, we can do yeah. So Sutta uvacha
Sutta Goswami said, Avyarta must be petitioned, Tada at that time, Tasmai unto him, Stanani places, Kalaye to the personality of Kali, Yado give him permission, Yutam gambling, Anam drinking, Striya illicit association with women, Suna animal slaughter, Yatra wherever, Dharma sinful activities, Chaturvidaha four kinds of.
translation. We can do this together.
Sutta Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, thus having petitioned by the personality of Kali, gave him permission to reside in places where gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter were performed.
Purport. The basic principles of irreligiosity, or actually, we can just take turns. So, someone can start.
Basic principles of irreligiosity, such as pride, prostitution, intoxication, and falsehood, counteract the four principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. The personality of Kali was given permission to live in four places particularly mentioned by the king, namely the place of gambling, the place of prostitution, the place of drinking, and the place of animal slaughter.
Sri Jiva Goswami directs that drinking against the principles of scripture, such as the Sautramani Yagya, association of women outside marriage, and killing animals against the injunctions of scriptures are irreligious. In the Vedas, two different types of injunctions are there for the pravartas, or those who are engaged in material enjoyment, and for the nivritas, or those who are liberated from material bondage. Vedic injunction for the Pavritas is to gradually regulate their activities toward the path of liberation. Therefore, for those who are in the lowest stage of ignorance and who indulge in wine, women, and flesh, drinking by performing satramani yagya, association of women by marriage, and flesh eating by sacrifices are sometimes recommended. Such recommendations in the Vedic literature are meant for a particular class of men, and not for all. But because they are injunctions of the Vedas for particular types of persons, such activities by the pravritas are not considered a dharma. One man's food may be poison for others. Similarly, what is recommended for those in the mode of ignorance may be poison for those in the mode of goodness. Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu therefore affirms that recommendations in the scriptures for a certain class of men are never to be considered adharma or irreligious, but such activities are factually adharma, and they are never to be encouraged. The recommendations in the scriptures are not meant for the encouragement of such adharma, but for regulating the necessary adharma gradually toward the path of home.
Following the footsteps of Maharaj Parikshit, it is the duty of all executive heads of states to see that the principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, are established in the state, and that the principles of religion, namely pride, illicit, criminal association, or prostitution, intoxication, and falsity are checked by all means. And to make the best use of a bad bargain, the personality of Kali may be transferred to places of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and slaughterhouses, if there are any places like that. Those who are addicted to these irreligious habits may be regulated by the injunctions of the scripture. In no circumstances should they be encouraged by any state. In other words, the state should categorically stop all sorts of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and falsity. The state which wants to eradicate corruption by a majority may introduce the principles of religion in the following manner.
We can take a pause there. So this section of the Bhagavatam will be very practical. So Prabhupada will start to mention like specifically what we can do if the government can do against such spread of your religion. So we'll take a quick pause there because there's already been so much here. So I think where I want to start this conversation, this topic is on Dharma. So first on like the principles of religion. So Prabhupada says that before we can be Krishna conscious, first we have to get to the platform of just being conscious. And what that means is that we need to just be human beings. So the difference between a human being and an animal is that a human being can practice religion. So if a human is not practicing religion, but is engaged in sleeping, mating, and defending, then there's no difference between an animal and a human life. What makes a human different is that you can get to that human platform and you can start to practice religious principles. So these religious principles is what Prabhupada has given us, which is the four principles that we follow, which is no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, and no intoxication. So he tells us that this is the basic. This is just the foundation. This is just to get us to a human platform, so that we can actually start chanting more purely. So once we get to this platform of purity, we start purifying the heart, then this is almost like the beginning of our Krishna consciousness, because we can start to actually understand, we can start to chant better, we can start to really connect with Krishna. And so this next part, which most of us here are in this stage, is we start to get to this stage of Dharma. So Dharma is a topic that is repeatedly taught in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, because we see that all these advanced devotees, they're always challenged with what to do. So Arjuna, being a very advanced devotee, had a problem with his Dharma. This is what the whole Bhagavad Gita is. Arjuna was a Kshatriya, and he didn't want to fight. So he had conflicting views of his Dharma. So in all our daily lives, what we'll see is that when we begin to chant and we begin to follow the principles, we'll start to want to, especially if we didn't grow up in the movement, we'll start to want to learn how to really mix Krishna consciousness with our everyday lives. So a lot of us struggle with like this identity, and this struggle with identity comes from our Dharma, from not knowing how do we apply ourselves authentically in Krishna consciousness. So in the temple, as brahmacharis and brahmacharinis, we are fully engaged in the ashram, so this is relatively easy for us, but it can become more difficult as we get older or as we just move on from the temple and start to apply these principles and how we're going to live. So this is something that I can reflect on because I lived in the ashram for a year, and then the last 2 years I started working in New York, and so I've had to be out there where there aren't devotees necessarily during my whole day, and so because of that, I have to really learn, and all of us really have to learn how to live in the material world, because actually Prabhupada says that the material world there's no such thing as a material world, that actually everything is spiritual. So there's the material is just an illusion. But for practical reasons, we have to understand that there is a separation between material and spiritual. But really, we get to the platform that nothing is material, that everything is within Krishna, because the material world is just the external manifestation of Krishna. So this topic, I kind of want to divide it in 2 phases. So there's the practical sense where we're talking about the Kshatriya here, in this case, specifically the Kshatriya. And then for those who aren't Kshatriyas, how we can still apply this to ourselves. So Mother Urmila has this amazing class. Like, to her, she's an amazing devotee, a Prabhupada disciple, and she has really dug in and dedicated her life to teaching the Varna system. So Prabhupada spent a lot of time writing books, and one of the things that he really wanted to accomplish was to establish the Varnashram system. And what that meant is to help us find what our dharma is. So what is it that we should be doing to be authentic and to act in Krishna consciousness? And so, does anyone know what the 4 varnas are? Shout them out. So yeah, so these are the 4 varnas. But Mother Urmila, because of this, can sometimes have negative connotations sometimes. So she actually likes to use different words for these. So she likes to starting from the head, we'll have the ideas, and then going down to the arms, we have government, and then the legs or the thighs, we have the resources, and then the feet. The stomach is resources, and then the legs are artistry. So you can kind of guess which one it connects to. So in the artistry division, this is someone who that has an art or specialization. So if you're like a baker, or you have a craft that you like to do, or maybe you like research, or if you're an engineer, really, it's something that you can specialize in, and you do really well in that one thing. So most people in this category are people that really just like to focus on doing their task. Not necessarily mean that they're not leaders or that they can't work with other people, but most of their pleasure comes from this activity. Then you have the resources. So these people are really good with money. They're really good with like creating sustainable resources. So most of these are like farmers or businessmen who their view in life and their passion is to find out ways to make things efficient and to make things sustainable. Then you have government, which is the varna that we're going to be talking about in this. And government is in charge of cultivating people, and so they enjoy positions of power, and in a Krishna conscious way, the dharmic way. What this means is using this power for the service of Krishna. So what this means is like management positions in Krishna house, where you're leading devotees. Another responsibility is to protect. So I know we have a lot of gym bros here, and that that's like really good because like you can really protect the devotees, and we know who we are, right? Like we know that some people are very soft, and this is very good for preaching to college students, people who are struggling to going through something. And then you have like someone who's more strong and tough, and this person, their service might be better protecting or bringing inspiration and enthusiasm. Then you have the ideas category, and in this category, you're someone who's inspired by teaching others and by thinking through things. And so this is like where you have the Brahminical class, people who dedicate their lives to teaching Bhagavatam, but also you have like PhDs or academics, professors. These people are also in the ideas category. So in this section of the Bhagavatam, Maharaj Parikshit is a government worker. So his responsibility is to protect the citizens of his kingdom. And so this is something that maybe for most of us who aren't in this category, we might not actually have to deal with this kind of issue. Because if we're in a situation where someone who is a dharmic starts to really, bring chaos into the temple, most likely what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to a management person and we're going to tell them to take care of the situation. And in most situations, it's actually the best thing for you to do if that's not your role. For example, I wouldn't do that. I feel more attracted to the artistic class. So if I see someone who's a dharmic, I would go to just anyone in management who can deal with that. So now that we have that, we can continue reading this. And we'll read what Prabhupada says that the state should do to eradicate this kind of behavior. So we can continue. So just scroll down.
Start from right there.
That one.
Okay. One, 2 compulsory fasting days in a month. If not more austerity. Even from the economic point of view, such 2 fasting days in a month in the state will save tons of food, and the system will also act very favorably on the general health of the citizens. 2, there must be compulsory marriage of young boys and girls attaining 24 years of age and 16 years of age respectively. There is no harm in co-education in the schools and colleges, provided the boys and girls are duly married. And in case there is any intimate connection between a male and female student, they should be married properly without illicit relation. The Divorce Act is encouraging prostitution, and this should be abolished. 3, the citizens of the state must give in charity up to 50% of their income for the purpose of creating a spiritual atmosphere in the state or in human society, both individually and collectively. They should preach the principles of Bhagavatam by a karma yoga or doing everything for the satisfaction of the Lord. Regular hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam from authorized persons or realized souls. Chanting of the glories of the Lord congregationally at home or at a place of worship. Rendering all kinds of service to Bhagavatas engaged in preaching Srimad Bhagavatam, and residing in a place where the atmosphere is situated with God consciousness. If the state is regulated by the above process, naturally there will be God consciousness everywhere. Gambling of all description, even speculative business enterprise, is considered to be degraded. And when gambling is encouraged in the state, there is a complete disappearance of truthfulness. Allowing young boys and girls to remain unmarried more than the above-mentioned ages, and licensing animal slaughterhouses of all descriptions should be at once prohibited. The flesh eaters may be allowed to take flesh as mentioned in the scriptures, and not otherwise. Intoxication of all description, even smoking cigarettes, chewing tobacco, or drinking of tea must be prohibited.
So yeah, that was the 3 principles. So the first one, 2 compulsory fasting days in a month. So we follow the sensibilities, right? I think, where we have a Kadashi twice in a month. So we also fast, and these on Akadashi we fast so that we can take more time to focus on Krishna. The second one on marriage, I mean, to be honest, like this was said in one of the purports that even though like this Bhagavatam is given in the context of the Vedic civilization, so we have to be able to read and then apply the context to our current time and place. And this is something that Prabhupada mentions all the time, that we always have to be focused on time and place. So for most people who aren't grown up, I guess the context for the Vedic civilization is that brahmacharis, they began from a very young age. They lived with their guru and guru. And so from a very young age, they were taught everything that they were taught. And by 18, they were already super enlightened beings. And so they had the qualifications to get married at such a young age. But at our age, the problem is that, you know, and I guess another thing is that back in the Vedic civilization, by 18, you had a specialization. As humans, we crave to be expert at something. We want to be masters at something. And at 18, in those times, like you usually passed on what your parents were. So if your dad was a Brahmana, then usually you would be a Brahmin as well. But by 18, you would not be an expert, but you would be pretty masterful at the thing. And so compared to our context, most people at 18 have no idea what they want to do. They don't know if they want to go to college or not go to college. And this is, as a result of video games. As an example, video games and social media, they give us a sense. Of illusion of accomplishment, because video games make you think that you're mastering something. Really, you're not. So video games are fulfilling that desire for humans instead of being able to do something practical and fulfilling. Instagram as well, it gives us the illusion of friendship, of intimacy, which is what we really crave, but we don't get it. And so because of this age of Kali and all this technology, our attention span is not even strong enough to be able to focus on gaining expertise in something. And you look in college towns, like you enter college at 18, you spend 4 years in college and you still don't know what you want to do. But actually by age 22, you should actually have, ideally you have an expertise by something. You can be able to teach someone what you do. And actually I think this is something that in this current environment people are realizing, because a lot of people are starting to transition out of college and enter more of a technical program. They're seeing that, why go to college if I can just get an expertise doing like construction or electrical engineering. And so we desire to have this expertise. And once you have this expertise, then the reason that Prabhupada says that marriage is very important is because we are motivated by family. This is something that's like our material entanglement, that we are inspired by family. So especially for men, this is something I can relate to, because I am a man, specifically, so I'm covered. That if you are a brahmachari and you can continue that life of celibacy, then that's great if that works for you. But what happens is most of the time, like when you work, what inspires you to work is to take care of your family. So if you don't have that inspiration, getting married is a good thing, because then you have someone to take care of you. And in economics, they teach you that the basic of economics is actually the household. That's where economics begins. So what that means is that the motivation to produce in this world, the motivation to do something, starts with the household. And as you know, Krishna consciousness is a doing philosophy. We're here to do. We're not here to isolate ourselves from the material world. We're not here to get away or artificially detach ourselves, but we're here to engage with the energy. And so for those who might struggle with that, family life is really good and really beneficial. The third point is on the citizens giving charity. So I'll touch on a little bit more about this. So I'm very curious, because a lot of you are really inspiring that you've given up a lot of your life and your time to dedicate to the temple. How many of you struggle with finances? Maybe like a raise of hand. Struggle as in like you stress out, it comes into your mind.
Yeah.
You're gonna be our financial advisor.
So this has become a personal finance 101 class. So for those that don't know, I actually did study finance for 4 years. And I work at a bank. So my life is about money.
And they sent you.
And they yeah, we heard there we need to get those sales up. We need to work on the bottom line. So personally, actually the reason I got into finance was because as a child, my parents are immigrants and they pretty much lost everything when they came here and they gave up everything. So my dad is a licensed doctor in Colombia. And when he came here, he wasn't able to practice medicine. And so he was doing very menial tasks. So when he came in, he was like sweeping. And my mom had my sister at the time, and I was born around the time that they moved in, and I was born here. So my mom was busy caring for her 2 children, and my dad was grooming and sweeping. He eventually learned how to do accounting, and he started to help out accounting, but still he was making probably $15, $20 an hour, if even. Being a licensed doctor. So growing up, I didn't have a lot of money, and so my mom was always very cautious about how we spent our money. And in high school, I started to get annoyed by this, and so I stopped asking my parents for money because it was always a struggle. And I just told them like I'll work for my own money. And so when all my friends were hanging out, I would actually I started tutoring, and with the tutoring money, I started to save up and I started to do the things that I wanted to do. And this was really my inspiration. And I figured out what I wanted to do in my life was that I didn't want to worry about money anymore. And because I grew up in the Hispanic household, and like I grew up with like good manners from my mom, she really taught me to be respectful I was very religious at the time. I was practicing Catholicism. That I had grown up with a healthy relationship with money. I wasn't interested in taking luxury vacations. I wasn't interested in luxury items. I just wanted a comfortable amount of money to be able to just not be stressed because I was present in that stress where every time we wanted something, it was always that we couldn't afford it. And so I dedicated 4 years of my career and my college time to how can I do the thing that will maximize the money I make. And so I sold my soul and I went to RBC and I gave them my life so I could have money. RBC is the Royal Bank of Canada. So when I first went,
not the one that Hugo went to. That's the
oh
Army.
yeah,
No, that's
ROTC.
Same, but different.
So in my role, my first year in New York, I was working from 8 in the morning to 2 in the morning. So like I would get from 8, and then at 6 p.m. everyone left, and then the analysts, all the young people, we stayed. Actually, Nitai one time came to visit me in New York, and I told him, yeah, just come to my office. He arrived at what, like 6 p.m. Did you get there? And I was like, hey, just give me 1 more hour. And I think we ended up leaving at like midnight. So Nitai was just waiting for me like for 4 hours. Thank you. You're very patient. So, and this was like my day to day. It wasn't 2 a.m. every day, but like midnight was not abnormal. Most of the time, I would leave at midnight, and then I would like finish up work in the office. At home until like 1 or 2 in the morning, and then just repeat the process. So this was the rat race, and in New York they pay you well for this. So I literally was selling my soul for finances. And the realization there was that this is something that my anartha that I struggled with, that I can't I have this struggle to surrender to so that I can feel comfortable. Thankfully though, I left that job and now I have a more big job, so I work in 9 to 5 now. So it's much better. So this point, so we hear this a lot that we should donate 50% of our income for spiritual practice. Before we do anything, we have to have the consciousness to actually get a benefit. So what that means is that Krishna speaks about the three modes of charity in the Bhagavad Gita. So he speaks about mode of charity and mode of ignorance, and mode of passion, and mode of goodness. So charity and mode of ignorance is when we give without actually thinking about it, so we can actually do more harm than benefit. So that can be, for example, sponsoring things that are adharmic, or sponsoring people to like have alcohol. So we're doing more harm than we are doing good. Charity in the mode of passion is when we give but we expect something. So we have attachment to the result. So that also cannot, it can be harmful as well if we give but we expect something. And then charity in the mode of goodness is when we give and we have no expectation of what we give. And even above that is when we give to the devotees. So we give for the propagation of preaching Krishna consciousness. That's the highest charity that we can do, and the highest participation. And in the spiritual world, because everything is absolute, there is no difference between what service you do. So if you are a grihas and you're donating money for the propagation of the holy name, then that service is just as good as the actual propagation of the holy name and giving books. So that's a higher realization, but that's there. So first off, we need to cultivate that consciousness that when we're giving, we have to know that we're giving back so that we can get something in return. Because actually, Krishna never leaves us profitless, actually. When we actually really give to Krishna, he actually doubles or triples our profit. So investing in Krishna is actually better than investing in the S&P 500, investing in any stock market. Because Krishna's profit is permanent. So the devotion that we get is permanent, it lasts. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that anything that we do in devotional life, it stays, so it never gets lost. So even if we don't finish, if we're not successful in this life, there is no fail, because in our next life, we will have that devotional currency that we built up. But anything else that you invest in, the S&P 500, or in anything, that eventually will lose. That's attached to the body, that's attached to the material world, which we understand from the Bhagavatam that this world is a cycle. So these things come and go. But giving to Krishna is purely spiritual, is transcendental to anything material. So that's why it's permanent. So once we cultivate this consciousness, again, back to context, this 50% can be given in multiple ways. So it doesn't have to literally mean that you give up 50% of your paycheck to the temple, because to be honest, with inflation, this actually might not be a very practical thing. So the first thing we realize is that as grihas, or people that make money, that giving your time is also part of that. So giving your time, giving your service can be considered part of that 50% that you give. And secondly, this is also very applicable towards the time of retirement. So we actually get this 50% lesson from the I first saw it in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya when he had accumulated a lot of money from his government work, and he decided that he wanted to spend the rest of his life preaching and spending time with Lord Chaitanya, and so he showed us what we should do with our wealth. So he distributed 50% to does anyone remember specifically how it went?
So Rupa Goswami, he was Sanatana Goswami. They've been ministers in government of Nawak of Bengal and Nawak Hussain Shah, and they had millions, if not billions, in now current money. So what he did before he joined the movement of Chaitanya, Rupa Goswami divided all his money into three parts. So first 50%, he gave to the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas for spiritual upliftment of the society. Then 25% he gave to his relatives, because relatives were very eager to get that portion, so to satisfy them. And then 1/4 he left for emergencies. And how he left it, he actually invested it, he gave it to some market, so people that could be easily taken out. And then Sanatana Goswami, when he
get caught in prison, that money will be stolen, and he paid for his bribery to escape from the prison. So the plan was.
Yeah. So in his case, he was already renounced, and so he gave up 50%. So in practice, what that may look for us, because to be honest, it can be difficult giving away 50% of your paycheck fully, and it honestly sometimes can just be not practical because I think the number is maybe close to 50% or something like that of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So we'll see that actually like there's not even enough money to make our own ends meet. So it's good to also have savings. So we can give that 50%, in different ways. But especially when you enter the Vanaprastha ashram, so in this ashram, around the age of 50, is when you start to detach yourself from family life and like material engagements. This is especially important to give 50% to the temple, to a mission. And I was reading a little bit like a blog about the Vanaprastha ashram from Advaita Swami, and he was mentioning that a lot of people, when they enter this ashram, what they do is that they think they're being renounced because they give all their money to their family, and then they keep 1%, and so their family's happy. But actually, we should give 99% to Krishna. They should be all to Krishna, because what we're doing there is we're creating like a backup. So we give our money, but we know that we have a backup just in case this doesn't work. But what Krishna wants from us is he wants us completely. He doesn't want us to have a plan B in the material world. He wants to have us completely. So when you're 50, it's actually good to just give it all to Krishna and just rely on Krishna. So from a practical standpoint, I think there's a lot of work to do as devotees. And if you are like in the Vaishya ashram, I encourage you to really look at this issue about how we can take care of devotees more, because in the Vedic civilization, it was actually very easy to do these things, because when you were a sannyas, you got easily taken care of. All the households, they would feed you. But that might not be practical in this day and age where we have too many problems and devotee care is not fully developed yet. So I encourage that if your dharma is revolved around money and resources and sustainability, that you help in this mission to find out how we can make this mission easier. And this is what Krishna House is there for. Like Krishna House provides you the free housing, free food, as long as you dedicate your mission, your life to Srila Prabhupada. But we can always do more, and we can always improve that after step for after that life. So as you consider, as you make money, consider that. And then we stop at 8:45 or 8:30. 8:30. Okay. So I can give time for questions if there's any questions, or comments.
Thank you. I got a lot of insight in this class. I was reflecting a lot. I was thinking about my academic career starting all the way from elementary school, and growing up, I was very strong in art. I made A's in every single one of my art classes my whole life. Put a lot into all the projects I had to do. It like wowed all the art teachers. Wow, he's really good. Everything else, not that strong in, right? But still, they never looked at me and said, this kid's really good at art. We need to utilize this, put him in an art school, put him in an arts trade school. He's hands-on. He doesn't learn this way, sitting down with the textbook to the chalkboard. He can't do it, but he has skills and abilities that he can use to be successful. We see that. I was never, or anybody else, also other kids who had similar talents, never given those types of opportunities. But what I did end up doing was a kind of off the beaten path way of going into a trade school, and I ended up learning how to paint cars because I put like a profitable trade, right, automotive, and then my art skills together, painting. And I was like, okay, but even still, it was like the road less traveled, right? And because of that, similarly, okay, I had a trade at 18,
And I've been making money in that trade since I was 18, while all my other friends were still going all the way to college, right? And didn't know what they wanted to do. I'm like, yeah, well, cool. I'll take you out to dinner and, whatever, because I always had money. But my question is, okay, and then how come it's so difficult though that like we want to put everybody into this academic funnel? I'm not bashing academics. I'm just saying there's a one size fits all model for the way that every individual should be approached, and nobody's really being looked at, and seeing how they can help our society, or that what skills and abilities they have that can help themselves and everybody else. That's the question. Yeah, so that's really a systemic issue that is it's not one root cause, but it starts with the home. So the parents, how they bring up the child. How many parents do you have that encourage your children to do what they want? Right? Most parents encourage them to make money, because if you're not Krishna conscious, your life revolves about material prosperity. So that's what they give the child. Like, they don't want the child to fail; they want them to make money. So that means being a doctor, being a lawyer, the easy way. And the issue continues in academics in school, where we don't have the flexibility. Again, this is a systemic issue where we don't have the flexibility to tailor teachings to students based on how they learn. And so we try to put them in a box, because what you find in capitalistic America is that we do what's most efficient. And so this system that we have is the most efficient to output students that we want. We want civilians that can have sufficient scientific education, that can work, and we just want people that don't think too much, don't question. And so how we do this is we create standardized tests, and we teach them in that way, because anything else is just too expensive, and it requires leadership. So this is the easy way, is to just create this box for most people to go through. And then again, you have social media, and as we know, like, this age of Kali is only going to get worse, and you see it with social media. I mean, now the teachers that are going to become teachers, they grew up in a society where, like, their attention span is not sufficient enough, because Facebook, Instagram, they took that away. So this issue will continue. But the answer is, just chant this Hare Krishna, because that's the ultimate. Everything is caused by illusion. Illusion is the reason that we're stuck in all this and we can't find solutions. So when we start chanting and we start purifying our heart, and we can see how things are, then we can start to give up our attachment to this material, and then we can start acting in a way that is more dharma.
Just to comment on how to give to the society. I learned from by going to European leadership summits, where I was at the presidents and his own supervisors meet. And example of Hungary is what is established by Shivaram Swami. If you're a member of Krishna Conscious Society, it's only with 10% of your income, and that's to do service or to do what they only require 10%. And if you do business, so they don't require 10%, they require up to 10%, so it's even less. So it's more favorable for the businesses. You have a restaurant, you have restaurants, yoga studios, and other businesses devoted around it. They give some percentage of that to the charity, to Krishna society. And I just distributed prasadam in Hungary for many decades, profusely, tens and thousands of plates on Sundays, and thousands of plates maybe every day in Budapest. They create such a goodwill in the society. So actually, Hungarians, they give to the charities, they can choose where they choose, say, 0.5% of the total annual income, and they give it to Krishna Conscious Society to ISKCON. So this one example of successful model, which is not exactly 50%, but it's something which works.
I first want to thank you for this class. I really feel like your prayers were answered in terms of bringing things that were useful about the Varnaf, the way that you brought Mother Urmila's description of the Varnashram system is something I've never heard before, and I find it quite excited to chew over. So My question is about gender in this particular time in history, right? So a lot of what we read in scripture is very binary. But something that I'm seeing, like I sit at the plates table at Christian lunch, and I see a lot of students who combine where I would not be able to clock if they were a man or a woman if you put a gun to my head. Like I would probably get shot 50% of the time. So my question for you, and I'm just curious about your perspective on this, because something that you were saying is that our job, is to take these, to take these teachings and to take these instructions and apply them to the current state that we're in. And it's something that I've been thinking about quite a while because I'm also from San Francisco, which is a queer mecca. And so, yeah, I'm curious about your perspective on how we apply some of these teachings to people who just don't fit into those boxes.
That's a good point. Well, I think first of all, like gender, as you know, is very abstract concept. So it's not just how you were born. So there is not just strictly you're male and female. There's more to being male and female, right? So you can have feminine qualities, you can have masculine qualities, and actually we have a mix of both. So being a male actually is that we're predominantly have masculine qualities, but we know that actually Christian is the ultimate masculine quality, and so the issue first of all is to understand that why they have this strong identity is it's an identity crisis that we all deal with. And so my perspective, actually, I was thinking about this because I'm Hispanic, and I remember when I first came to freshman year, there was like this. There's like they have a building for the Hispanic community, and I never really felt connected to do that, and that's just because I never really identified myself. It's part of my identity. I am Hispanic, but I never really gave it too much attention. My identity as a devotee is what I give attention to, and that's why we're all here. And so I think to begin in is that these people who identify as binary or struggle with their gender identity is because it's again because of illusion that we don't really understand what identity is, and so that's where their focus is on how can I identify as that. I think the direct answer to your question is we have to treat with compassion and a lot of love, because the truth is that these people do struggle a lot because of our illusion that we're not the body. We start to treat people differently, and it's true, they go through a lot of bullying. Probably growing up, that's what they experience. Like, you have to understand that these people, most likely, most of them experience a lot of hurt in their life, and so they probably had a lot of hurt with their family, not being the person that their family expects them to be, with their friends. And so what they've done is that they found something that they can connect to. They found other people who have experienced that hurt growing up, and they've unionized, and they are part of the mission now. And what they ultimately want is love. They just want to live in a place where they can feel accepted. And so right now, because of so much hate, they're attacking with just as much hate with love. And that's what manifests as this LGBT movement. And so we have to see beyond the body. We have to help them. As devotees, we have a higher vision because we don't identify with anything bodily. We identify as devotees of the Lord. So we have to help them see that. And so it's actually the same way we would deal with anyone. With them, we have to be able to see that higher vision, that this is just hurt, it's just pain, and it's painful because they're identifying with this body. They're not binary, they're not male, they're not female. The soul is not a gender, but this is what they have for this moment, for this life. So we should, maybe learn a little bit, learn about themselves. So one, kind of like learning about, how stereotypes can hurt them, and getting to know them. And really, when you get to know their pain, then you can enter empathy and sympathy, really connect with that person, and that's what they want. They want to be heard and they want to be understood. So we can learn about them. Yeah, sorry. Okay. That's all. Thank you guys. Do you have time for one more question? Or should we...
I have a final question.
Yeah, very quick question. The very quick question is, as everybody like struggle for better skill, how can we educate the kids saying that we should have some sense of purpose for the Lord Krishna and donate something? So how can you make your kids to follow in those footsteps?
We have to be very active in their life from a very young age. So I don't have direct experience with this, so I'm just gonna talk theory right now, but I know it's gonna be more difficult than what I say. But Prabhupada says in his book a lot that our practice works because we give a higher taste. And so with children, we have to engage them and we have to encourage them. So we have to find out what they like. So in Krishna consciousness, we have a lot of things that children can do. They can paint, they can play mridanga, they can offer, they can serve, they can cook. So we can give them a taste of everything and then find the thing that works for them and then invest fully in that thing and encourage them, be there for them. And then, I think what most people don't do is that we don't give them responsibility and autonomy. So at a very young age, maybe like by either 7 or 8 years old, you should give them autonomy to make their own decisions. So they decide what they want to do with their lives. And we should let them face their consequences because that's how they learn. And when they learn, they actually start taking accountability and ownership for their own lives. And if they can cultivate that at a very young age, then they'll take responsibility for their own life. So I think our job as parents is to encourage them, support them, and to be there with them and to love them a lot. And that might even manifest as like if they want to take a break. I don't know how that would look like. I imagine a lot of children eventually want to check out the material world for some time, and we would have to navigate. So I think just continually reading and learning about how we can navigate those situations with those children, but it's always dealing it with compassion and love, because they'll realize when they go out that they won't find anything like they had growing up. So I see a lot of devotees that I speak to that grew up in the movement, they'll go out, but then they'll come back because they realize that everything that was outside is nothing to
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Okay, now we'll take breakfast. Srila Bhagavatam ki
Jai.
Prabhupada ki
Jai. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna